Master Gardener Jeanne Poremski, kind enough to join us in studio again this morning. And she's with us here on WAOH.TV and, of course, 93.5, 1590 WAKR. If you have a text question for Jeanne, please get it in sooner than later at 330-370-1590, 330-370-1590. Jeanne, we're October 26th, and at least in my little neck of the woods, the leaves are a little bit later coming down this year than they have in the past. Are you seeing that everywhere?
Yeah, for the last couple of years, they are a little later. But if you realize that we had no rain, and in some of my plants in my garden, when they started to color up, all of a sudden overnight they just went brown.
Yeah.
Because they were choked off. It just didn't happen because of the dryness. But as far as the leaves go, well, they over a very long period of time, because I had my first reds, and then I had my middle reds, and then the last of the maple trees turning red, but I'm just going to have to kiss them goodbye now.
Yeah.
I came back from a weekend away to find all of my ginkgo leaves on the ground. I didn't expect that.
You know what I saw, and I bring that up because in my back of my house, I've got about 22 trees, and then about half of them were green up until about 36 hours ago. And I came home from work yesterday and I looked at my wife. I said, boy, the gold looks great in the backyard because they're all gold. Within the last day and a half, they went from a greenish brown to a beautiful, vibrant gold in like a day and a half.
Well, we're missing a particular species. Our green ash, white ash are missing because they're dead. So we've lost some of the deep reds and the russety browns that they would have brought. So our color has become a little same, and we have the benefit of the red maples, which is sort of a weedy tree. They are a pioneer tree that will begin to take over, and you hope that there's room for oaks to take root. So while red maples aren't bad, it's just that they've been given too great an opportunity because other trees are gone.
Okay. It's the fall season. I know you want to talk a little bit this morning. And again, text line's open for you, 330-370-1590, about what to clean up right now and what not to clean up. So why don't you go down that road?
We have progressed recently because we did have a frost, a killing frost, or maybe it was a freeze, because the one major thing I did was get my tomatoes, peppers, and eggplants out of the ground and thrown away. I did have problems with the eggplant. I had potato beetles that I had never had before, so that's a little worrisome.
So did that kill your eggplant?
Oh, no, but it just ate a lot of leaves, so it would slow fruit production. And I didn't know it because I was ignoring them. They were doing so well, producing so much, and I turned my back. So there's a lesson right there. But they're gone. They're out of the garden. That's done for. They are disease carriers for the most part, so roots and all went into the trash. I don't want to gamble with that. And next year they will be planted in a different place, a little bit of distance, so the disease shouldn't be there. But when I look at my beds, I've made a decision about something this year, and it is the foliage of my Siberian iris. Since I have a long border, I do have a number of them, at least a half dozen, some different colors, some repeat colors. And I do believe that they have a lot of fungus on the leaves. Perhaps it's rust. But I have seen stripping, lines of some sort of fungus during the summer. So I am not going to chop them in place. This year I'm going to cut them at the ground level and just throw them away. And that's just this year, hoping that if I'm rid of that and it doesn't overwinter, then I can use them next year. But another tip for that is I have a working knife. A garden knife, the A.M. Leonard garden knife. It's stupendous. And it has a cutting edge on it, a jagged edge.
Okay.
Now, if you want to replicate that, just go to a store where you can get a cheap knife with a nice grady edge on it that will saw well. That's all you need is a cheap kitchen knife, a big one, for cutting foliage like that. So you don't need my expensive knife. I adore my expensive
You mentioned
knife.
something a couple of moments ago that I want you to expand on here. You mentioned that you're going to pull the eggplant out and you're going to throw those things away and you're going to plant them in a different location. So talk about why you're going to do that out of that location, and that location that you had before where the disease hit the eggplant. Can you plant anything there next year?
Oh, of course, because those potato beetles are going to be exclusive to the solanum family. That's the tomato, eggplant, potatoes, because they're potato
So can you
beetles.
plant like zucchini there?
Oh, absolutely, because
Okay.
there's no crossover with that insect, none whatsoever. And I'm hoping that when the eggs hatch of any potato beetles in the soil, and the larvae, are just little worms, little maggoty things. I hate to say that to creep people out, but they are creepy. Sorry, I raised my voice. And I smash them when I find them. But I didn't find them this year. Bad on me. So when they appear, they just are crawling around. If they can't find their food immediately, they will perish because they can't travel. And if my plants are 15 feet away, then fine. Or if they're on the other side of the walk, they're fine.
Is that a practice that we should do anyways
Oh,
from
yes.
year to year? Like I'm throwing this
Oh,
up.
yes.
You plant tomatoes in position A. Do you move them to position B next year, and
But
do you rotate them around or not?
you also must plant them in position C because your rotation should be about 3 years long.
Oh,
So in that
okay.
second year, don't move them right back. See, I have
And
a very
before I let you get off
Yeah.
that for a time, I'm sorry to interrupt you. The reason being why we should do that is
well, that disease stays in the ground. And that's why I remove the roots of that plant. If they're my beans, I don't usually remove the roots. I leave them because they have a collection of nitrogen around them since they're nitrogen collecting plants. And by the way, there was a frozen bean hanging on my trellis right in front of my nose while I was doing that work. And it was a little withered, but I popped it right in my mouth and it was still crunchy. So don't think of a freeze or frost as deadly. It's just in the progress of things. So you still have things in your garden that are flowering, hardy things. But for the most part, mine were shot. I was going to bring a bouquet in today, but I took a look and I thought, oh no, because I had planned on things lasting.
Master Gardener Jeanne Poremski with us. Again, text line open for you, 330-370-1590. Let's get a quick traffic update. Here's Stephanie in the newsroom.
The disabled vehicle on 76-224 westbound near the Kenmore leg has been moved to the right shoulder. You have slowdowns on 77 northbound from Arlington to 224, on 224 eastbound at 77, around the Central Interchange, and on 77 northbound at Gent. Follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter, at AkronTXWX. From the Vanderveer Kia Traffic Center, where you can shop over 500 new and pre-owned vehicles at KiaVanderveer.com. I'm Stephanie Nicole.
Sounds good, Stephanie. Thank you. We're looking at a high today about 72 degrees with cloudy conditions. 75 tomorrow with morning rain. And currently we're 60 degrees. I have one more question on this rotating these vegetable plants. What if we don't have disease in that area? Let's say we have a nice hardy crop of tomatoes and everything went well. Should I still rotate to positions B and C? Is that something I should do regardless of disease?
Yes.
And why should we do that?
Let it be a major commandment that is you rotate every 3 years, which means don't bring it back for another 3 years at all. Don't forget you've depleted the soil of the nutrients that
so
were
there you go.
used
That's what
by
I
that
thought the
plant.
answer
Well,
was.
that is a superficial thing because you can add fertilizer to make up for that. So
Okay.
you don't have to worry about that. It's usually disease because disease, spores, insect eggs are usually left behind. So that's why we rotate.
Gotcha. Okay, so also late October, I mentioned to you that I'm going to get the clippers out and I'm going to knock down the hostas probably this weekend. Is this the time?
When the hostas become flattened, I think that's a good signal that they go. Otherwise, they can be complementary with their yellows and browns with other things in your garden beds. If they play well with others. If they're standing there looking dead, then they're a little forlorn. So it's a case of if they're big, thick-leaved types, I would cut them and remove them because the little buds that come up from the ground can't penetrate them in the spring and might get stuck in the old dead ones.
That's a great
If they're
point.
nice thin-leaved ones, you can leave that because they'll just compost on the spot. And again, if you saw disease in this case, you'll make the decision. You're walking around your garden. It's what we call scouting. So if you're scouting and you find disease or some evidence, a sign of something on your plants, you just say, I'm going to throw them away this winter. I'm not going to chop them up in place or put them on my compost. It's simple as that. You're responsible. You make the decision, but you've got to look.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I never thought of it that way, but if you leave those leaves there, it really compromises that plant, at least some of them in the spring season.
And otherwise, I mulch in place and I do it successfully. And as I'm deadheading, I leave things in place, just remove the flower heads. But the stems I chop up and leave right there.
Tracy, one of our listeners, just texted me a question. Has to do, she says, Ray, I hear you and Jeanne talking about trimming back this weekend. We just had another flowering crop on our knockout roses, and they look beautiful.
Oh, they
Is it the time now that I should trim back on my knockout roses? And if I do, how low do I take them?
Well, if they're beautiful, don't.
Oh, really?
Because
Okay.
I was viewing so many knockouts just recently that are beautiful. So just wait until it's chilly and you're cold. And they did get frozen and then go out and maybe take down your rose bush by half, or you could save it till spring if it's not a very big one. This is something you don't have. You're not forced to make a big decision.
I see.
But you don't want it to be blown around in the wind and the branches whipped around, because that might loosen the roots. That's why we cut them back.
Besides the knockout roses, the other type of roses, those are the ones you trim out pretty good because
The
of them
hybrid
whipping
teas.
around.
Yes, you're absolutely right, because they aren't good hardy shrub roses.
Mm-hmm.
And the hybrid teas are so much more difficult to grow and costly in the first place that people will fuss over them, and that's their hobby, for sure. But I have some too, because I know of some that have tremendous fragrance. So that's what I have.
Debbie, one of our listeners, we got time for this last question here. Debbie, one of our listeners says, Jeanne, I often have heard you talk about bugs. I'm noticing in my kitchen those, quote, stink bugs are coming in all over the place. Have you noticed from other people that you talk to that there's a big population of stink bugs this fall?
No one talks about it, but we just refer to them all the time. I know I'll have one crawling on me this fall while I sit in the living room. That always happens. I see more ladybugs on my windows this year than I do stink bugs. But when it comes to a stink bug, take a piece of paper towel, wet it. Grab that stink bug, wrap it up in it, and you can do whatever you want with it, because it can't get out of that. As that dries, or a piece of coffee filter, it can't get through it. As it dries, it becomes hard. Or you can flush it, or you can
my girls,
squeeze it, but it's
my
a little
girls
stinky.
take care of them. If they see them in the house, they'll get them on paper, and then they'll take them out to the back deck and let them go.
Well, you see, they'll be right back.
Jeanne, as always, thanks for the time to visit.
you're
Good
welcome.
seeing you again. We'll do it again next week.
All right, and thanks for the opportunity. I love talking to everyone.
Master Gardener Jeanne Poremski live in our studio this morning, WAKR.
America is kept safe because the Army National Guard